All right. Yeah. Exactly. Do good rule life when you're blind, like have a non-blind person lead you up the stairs. I just want to say that's my best friend now. We've been best friends for over 40 years, and I'll just say, when we were kids, we also worked like crazy in high school to make money to pay the down payment our parents had. No. We were total sponges. We just like went to the mall and played video games. So it's possible to come back. It's possible to come back if you haven't achieved the kind of things you guys have, but it definitely helps to get an early start. Now, I was trying to think. I thought, I should start with a joke, and then but the problem is all my favorite jokes are filthy. So I shouldn't go that route. And then one of my buddies here from Fox Funding, another one of the startup businesses I work with, said, well, what about a financial joke, right? Like a Wall Street joke, right? And I thought, I don't know if I know any Wall Street jokes that are really funny. But then my friend Adam, by the way, one benefit of having a 40-year friend with you is you don't have to write a speech in advance. Just sit next to him, and then he'll crack wise the whole time. He'll just use that material, right? So Adam says to me, so Adam and I are talking, and he starts talking about Wall Street stuff, and we realize that the beauty of Wall Street is there are lots of funny jokes. It's just that they're true, right? And so here's one, right? So I was at I teach at Harvard Business School, right? So I'm there the other day. We're in the research seminar, and one of my friends points to an interesting piece of research he saw. So what it found is that Jim Cramer is probably the world's best-known stock pitch person. And look, I like Jim Cramer. I think he does a lot of good by kind of getting people interested in the idea of stock markets and thinking about companies and so forth. So I'm a fan. But still, I'm going to tell you the story. So when Jim Cramer talks about a stock and suggests that it's a good stock and hits the buy button and so forth, right, that stock tends to go up the next day, which makes sense, right? Because obviously people hear the story and they find the story convincing. They say, Cramer's like, look, it's only at $56 and I think it's worth $67, right? Except here's the crazy thing. The stocks go up the next day, even when the Cramer show they ran was a rerun. so that's a joke about Wall Street, but it's also true. Okay, so I was trying to think. I guess this is supposed to be like investment of a lifetime. So I think I'm supposed to talk about my greatest investment ever. And this is a nightmare from a public speaking perspective, right? Because there's two ways you can go, each of which seems awful, right? So one way is I could be like, well, I saw the puts on these debentures struck in 2023 were underpriced by a nickel. And then I thought, well, how am I going to hedge the risk out? Oh, well, maybe I can go into the Forex markets and that's not an interesting story. Who cares, right? Oh, I made $700 on a $400 investment 32 years ago, right? What difference does it make? But the other way to go with it is to be like, the greatest investment I ever made was in love. Or something like that, right? That seems even lamer, right? Now I will say this story though, just since I started on friendship, is when I was in 10th grade, my advisor, who's a wonderful guy who now runs the school that I went to, he sent home a note to my parents about me, and he's like, Randy is a fine student and a sweet kid. The only problem is he only has one friend, Adam Devlin, which is that kind of right? So Adam's parents later that year pulled him out of the school because they said, if you're not going to work harder than this, we're not paying for private schools. So they sent him off to public school. So then it was down to 0 friends, which is not the ideal number. I have to be honest with you, it's not ideal. But what I will say is that while I was not popular in high school, what it turns out, 40 years later, Adam and I have started 4 businesses together. We started a hedge fund that ran $1 billion. We've got a new company that's amazing. So what I would say is, screw popularity. Just find one person to stick with you through thick and thin for decades, and that's pretty simple. So here's a funny thing about getting involved with Wall Street. I met this guy years ago. He was a math professor at Yale, and he had left that to go to Wall Street, right, to make more money. We'll talk about money a little more later. Okay, and well, we're going to talk about it now and then later, and maybe in between too. So, okay, so and he was saying how the problem with Wall Street is, no matter how brilliant you are, there's gonna be some guy 3 offices down who makes more money than you. And there's no way to convince yourself you're better than him at your job, because it's the point is to make money, right? And that's what he does, right? If you're at Yale, you could be like, oh, well, I'm this Yale professor, so I'm a big deal. So this is one of the challenges of Wall Street. If you end up involved in the investment business, you will like know someone. You'll like have a friend who becomes a billionaire. And then you'll be like, wait, do I suck? I'm not a billionaire, right? So that can be a little frustrating. Okay, but you can learn a lot from these people. So I have a friend who's had this kind of success. He's amazing. And I said to him, how have you done so amazingly well, sir? I call him sir now that he's a billionaire. and he said, look, it's all about human resources. He said, I put like half of all my time into finding the best people. And if I do that well enough, I don't have to do anything because I have these amazing people around me. Okay? So you know, well, how is that a useful lesson for young people? And what I think the lesson is take the flip side of that. And so this is what I want to say is the best investment you can make, the best investment I ever made, if I have to use that, right, the investment of a lifetime, is investing in your own human resources. Now there's a lame version of this and an interesting version. The lame version is so get a good education and study hard in school, okay, you should do all that. All right, I'm not going to talk more about the lame version. The interesting version is this. It's not just about getting good people, it's about having the right people in the right things. So in other words, how do you figure out what you should spend your time, what you should do for a living, and what you should do to train yourself to find the right thing to do for a living, and so forth, right? So I think this is a really important question, and one that frankly I spent almost no time thinking about when I was young. I liked math, and I was like, I don't know, maybe I could teach math, right? Which isn't that different from what I ended up doing, but you know, the point is, it's not, I don't think we're great at giving career advice. And I'm certainly not going to say that I'm great at giving career advice, but I'm going to try to give you a framework to work from. Now, there's a well-known framework, and it's well-known because it's really good, so I'm going to give it to you even though you've probably heard it already. And that is that you want the Venn diagram of stuff you're good at, stuff you love, and stuff that somebody will pay you for, right? And if you find something in the middle of that Venn diagram. Now, the only problem with Venn diagrams is that John Green kind of ruined them for me. I don't know if you guys read this book, The Fault in Our Stars, right? But basically, it's a book about these two kids with cancer who fall in love. So that's not a book that I'm interested in reading, right? Like, I like books about, like, ex-military guys who are super badasses and stumble into crimes to solve so they get an opportunity to beat people up. Okay, but my two daughters love this book. They're like, Dad, you can love this book even though it's about these cancer kids. I'm like, whatever, you know, or anything for my daughters, right? So I read the book, it's great. Okay, so there's this one bit in it where the guy who has had cancer and had his leg amputated and so forth, is the girl is asking him about his past sexual experiences. Right? And he says, and he picks up a piece of paper and he draws a circle and then a dot on the other side of the paper. And she said, what's that? He said, this is a Venn diagram of the two sets, people who've had sex and amputee cancer boys in high school, right? And so now whenever I think of Venn diagrams, I think of that too. Anyway, so, all right, so Venn diagrams, so, all right, so the general idea of these three things is a really good idea. Okay, so when you think about careers, think, what am I good at? What do I love? What pays? Okay, so one thing that's nice about investing as a career is it does pay shockingly well. Okay, I'm just going to give you the straight dope on this. Okay, I was talking to one of my students the other day, and I teach a course on entrepreneurship. So he was thinking about starting a business, but he has a good job offer from a private equity firm. So I said, okay, well, just give it a shot. What does the job offer pay? And he says $500,000 a year to start. And I said, take the job, dude. Your business idea is not that good. It's good. $500,000 a year, you're 26. Okay, so I'm just saying, it's a good business for money, okay? It's just like, it's a useful thing to know. Okay, I didn't know anything about what businesses paid a lot, right? Now, I will say this. There is this risk of fighting the last war, right? My parents wanted me to be a lawyer and an accountant both, because they're like, you have them both, you're covered on both angles, and you can do tax stuff and all this stuff. And that would have been a good idea. I would have been pretty good at it. It's a good job, right? That's a good job combination. But the point is, Wall Street would have been a better job for me, but my parents didn't know about Wall Street, right? So I'm telling you about Wall Street because that's this generation's awesome job. Maybe by the time you guys are fighting the battles out there, it'll all be nanotech or something, will be where the money is. So don't take me too seriously, but I can just tell you, as of 2019, Wall Street pays a lot. Okay, so that base is covered if you go to Wall Street, but I'm not pushing you to go to Wall Street. I'm just saying to you, this is a framework to think about any kind of job, okay? So let's, obviously I'm going to have to use my own experience with the framework. Let's talk about this stuff, about what you're good at, all right? So the way I ended up in my current job was I had this realization in my early 20s. And the way it worked was there were two things I was really good at. I was a math major, so I was into math. And then my avocation, what I did for fun was I went to debate tournaments on the weekends. Okay, so that's, I would say, you guys say that's about as nerdy as stock picking, right? I think we're on the same plane there, right? Okay, so I was really into debate tournaments. Okay, and I was way below the top in the math department in college, probably below the middle, to be completely honest. And on the debate circuit, I was very good, but not the very top, okay? And I thought, here's the thing though. I'm way better at talking than all these other math guys. And I'm way better at math than all the other people on the debate circuit. And so if I could find a job that puts these things together, I'd be a Clover, right? So there's a classic line about this from the newspaper writer H.L. Mencken. He said, I don't write the best and I don't write the fastest, but I write better than anyone who writes faster and I write faster than anyone who writes better. Now the mathematically inclined among you will notice that this could in theory be true of every person on earth, right? Because the best person could be the slowest, and the second best could be the second slowest, and along the diagonal of a matrix if you picture it that way. Okay, but that isn't the way it really works. The way it really works is if there's nobody who's either better or faster than you, you won't be the only person who will go faster. There might be 1,000, but you will have a good job, right? If you are better than all the people who are faster and faster than all the people who are better. So my combination was, okay, I've got sort of better talking than math people, better math because there aren't that many people who can beat me on both, even though there's a zillion people who can beat me on each, right? So then I had to look for a career that put those two things together. It doesn't have to be two. It could be 3 or 5 or 7 things. I knew an emergency room doctor once, and she told me, she's like, look, I'm really successful in my career as a doctor. She said, I'm smart, but I'm not nearly the smartest. I'm good with my hands, good like surgical skills and those kind of things, but not the best. But she said, I have this third skill, which is I will show up every damn day at 5 in the morning, and everybody else is dragging in, and I'm just ready to go. And those 3 things combined make her a star, right? So think broadly about what skills mean. Skills doesn't necessarily mean a class that you take in school or anything like that. It means different things that you bring to the table. It could be having an amazing personality. It could be, that you suffer fools gladly, right? There's a lot of really smart people who can't deal with people who aren't as smart as them. And then there's other smart people who can. That's a huge asset in certain jobs and not in others. Okay, so think about how you can put things together. So that's my suggestion on the what you're good at part. And then the last piece is the what you love piece. And look, this is advice I give to every student I deal with, whether from grade school all the way up through MBA and beyond, right? Which is, I really push the do what you love story, okay? And the reason is, the rewards in life all come from being at the very top of something. And it's impossible to be at the very top, with the rarest of exceptions, impossible to be at the very top unless you work like a lunatic. And again, with the rarest of exceptions, it is very, very difficult to work like a lunatic unless you love what you're doing, right? So when people come to me and they say, should I major in art history or computer science? I say, well, what do you love? And if they say art history, I say, do art history. Because you can train your mind. There's 2 skills that really matter. You need to be able to think clearly, and you need to be able to communicate your thoughts, okay? And you can learn those in art history, you can learn them in chemistry, you can learn them in coding, you can learn them in economics, you can learn them in anything. If you pick the thing you're really into, you will learn those skills really well because you'll just think about it and talk about it all the time. And you'll get great at thinking and communicating in those areas. And then, if you want to have a job in a completely non-art history area, it's fine because you know how to think and you know how to communicate. People will find uses for your skills. So I really push the do what you love as a young person, and even beyond, right? I call this the J.J. Rydell lesson. There was a teacher at my school, John Rydell's son was John Jr. J.J., okay? And he was one of the smartest kids in school, superstar hockey player, amazing guy, right? Everybody figured he'd be a big lawyer because that's what smart people did back in the 80s, was became lawyers, right? Okay, so instead, J.J. goes and becomes a school teacher, right? Which was unexpected for us. By our 5th reunion, he was the dean of boys at an elite prep school, right? And now he runs some awesome school, right? Because, so he not only rocketed up the charts faster than if he'd done law, which he wasn't into, but he's probably making more money than he would as a lawyer because he's awesome at it and cares a lot instead of doing something second. Okay, so those are my suggestions for the 3 pieces. In terms of money, I don't have a ton to say. You just need to get paid. I don't think it's super important that you make $500,000 a year, but if it's important to you, then put it on the list and look for the jobs that have that aspect as part of it. But most important is, look, if the thing you love is something that nobody will pay you for at all, find the thing you love second most. You can do the thing you love in school, but I'm saying for career, you got to eventually get to something. I sometimes say, I'm like, you should absolutely pursue as a career the thing you love most, unless you want to be an actor, in which case find something. But okay, so let me think for 2 seconds if I left anything out that I desperately, that I'll hate myself if I don't say. Okay, so upshot is, number one, invest time in thinking about what are your skills, what you love, and so forth, and trying to learn about careers. And the people in this room will be eager to help you, right? People you've met tonight and all, we will be a resource for you. You can reach out to me, randy@hbs.edu, and say, I like this, I like this. I'd probably be wrong, but I'll give you ideas. Other people will give you ideas, and then you can weigh those ideas. So put the time into building your human resources, again, not in the way that everybody else will do, which is also true with education and everything else, building your skills, but in terms of actually figuring out what are things that would be workable combinations for me. And I think I've taken enough time, so I'm going to sit down, but I think they'll pull me up later for Q&A, so if I miss something important, we can deal with it then. So thanks.